It begins with a sound many great civilizations feared. Silence. Not the silence of peace, but the silence before ambition carves itself into history. Out in the cold, mist-shrouded waters of the northern Adriatic, where the sea meets shifting marshes and the wind whispers through reeds, a new power stirred weak, fragile, desperate. No one would have imagined that from these muddy islands, battered by tides and haunted by emptiness, a glittering empire would rise. But Venice did not begin with strength. It began with refugees running for their lives. In the 5th century, when Roman authority collapsed and barbarian warlords carved Europe apart, terrified families fled to the swampy lagoon. They brought nothing but memories of fallen cities. Padua, Aquileia. Auchinum Place is now burning behind them. The mainland was no longer safe. But the marsh, that was a different world. The barbarians' heavy horses sank in the muck. Their armies found no food, no shelter, no roads. For the refugees, the lagoon was no paradise, the last place left where no conqueror wanted to follow. So they built huts on stilts. They patched boats out of driftwood. They tied their lives to the tides. And slowly, painfully, Venice was born not as a kingdom, but as a refuge carved from desperation. Yet even in this fragile beginning, something unusual glimmered. These islanders refused to be ruled by kings. They elected leaders. They formed councils. They debated. In a violent world drowning in tyranny, Venice discovered its identity early. Freedom was not a privilege. It was survival. The first Doge, or Duke, was chosen in desperation, a single leader to act swiftly against Lombard threats on the mainland. But Venice did not give him absolute power. Their instinct was never to kneel. Every Doge was watched, checked, constrained. A warning was whispered across the lagoon. Anyone who tries to become a king will be treated like an enemy. That warning would echo through 1,000 years. By the 9th century, Venice had found its calling not on land, but at sea. The lagoon people became fishermen, then traders, then sailors of remarkable skill. They studied the winds, the tides, the routes of merchants from Byzantium and the Islamic world. Slowly, quietly, Venice grew rich, but something else grew too. Danger. The sea was filled with raiders, Saracens from the south, Slavs from the east, Normans from the west. Venice could run no more. If it wished to survive, it needed a weapon. It found one in the form of sleek, fast, deadly ships, the galleys. Light as arrows, strong as spears, they carried Venice's fate. And ironically, it was religion that brought Venice its greatest symbol of power. In 828, 2 Venetian merchants stole the body of Saint Mark from Alexandria, hiding it beneath pork to fool Muslim guards. Smuggled across the Mediterranean, the relic arrived in Venice to thunderous applause. Saint Mark became the protector of the lagoon, and Venice grew bolder. Traders followed. Pilgrims followed. Wealth followed. Then came the great prize, the building of St. Mark's Basilica, a shrine built not only to God, but to ambition. Gold mosaics glittered like fire. Marble pillars rose from distant lands. The Venetians were declaring something dangerous. We were born in mud, but we are destined for greatness. By the 11th century, the Mediterranean was a battleground of empires: Byzantines, Fatimids, Normans. Venice played them all against each other. It served the Byzantine Empire until it became more profitable not to. It traded with Muslims while claiming to defend Christendom. Venice swore loyalty to no one but the scent of gold. Then came a moment that would launch it into the heart of world history: the First Crusade. Thousands of knights marched across Europe. Armies pushed toward the Holy Land. Supplies were needed, ships were needed, and Venice, with its rising naval power, offered both for a price. Even then, the Venetians understood something crucial. War is not tragedy. War is business. But it was the Fourth Crusade, a century later, that would reveal the true nature of Venice. A crusade that began with prayers and ended in betrayal, so shocking it changed the world. In 1202, the Crusaders made a deal with Venice. They would gather in the lagoon, and Venice would transport them to Egypt. But when the time came, the Crusaders were broke. They couldn't pay, and the Doge, blind, elderly, but fiercely cunning, saw an opportunity. Instead of canceling, he offered a new deal: attack Benice's enemies to erase the debt. What followed was a chain of events that spiraled into darkness. The Crusaders, hungry, restless, manipulated by Venetian ambition, turned their weapons not on Muslims, but on Christians. First, Zara, then the unthinkable Constantinople itself. In 1204, the greatest Christian city in the world, the jewel of Byzantium, was torched by those who claimed to liberate the Holy Land. Venetian ships stormed the harbor. Venetian soldiers looted relics, jewels, gold, icons, treasures that still gleam in Venice today. The bronze horses on St. Mark's was taken from Constantinople, the riches that funded the Venetian Empire for centuries, torn from a burning city that trusted them. Venice had crossed a line. It had betrayed an empire, and from that betrayal, it built its own. By the 13th century, the Lagoon Republic dominated trade from Syria to Spain. Its merchants swarmed the Mediterranean. Its navy crushed enemies. Its wealth dazzled Europe. But with wealth came fear, and with fear came enemies. Genoa, Venice's rival, struck first. The two maritime giants battled in a brutal war for control of the seas. Cities burned, fleets sank, thousands died. The war climaxed in the Battle of Chiarozola in 1298, where Venice suffered a devastating defeat. Thousands of Venetians were captured, including a man whose name would echo across continents: Marco Polo. The great explorer, imprisoned in Genoa, dictated his travels through Asia book that introduced Europe to Kublai Khan, Chinese wonders, and distant lands no Venetian had ever seen. Ironically, Venice's greatest defeat helped spread its greatest story. But defeat did not break the Republic. Venice rebuilt faster, richer, stronger than before. Yet for all its power, Venice feared two things: not invasion, not plague, but corruption and security. The Venetian government became one of the most sophisticated and paranoid in the world. Councils within councils, secrets within secrets. The shadowy Council of 10 Masters of espionage, assassination, and surveillance. Even the Doge was merely a prisoner of tradition, wrapped in ceremonial chains that reminded him he was a symbol, not a ruler. Behind the shimmering facade of Venice lay a steel trap, the most controlled political machine in Europe. Outsiders saw masks, festivals, romance, but beneath the music and gold was a city always watching itself. Then the Black Death came. The plague swept across Europe like a divine punishment. Bodies piled in canals. Families vanished overnight. Venice was hit brutally, yet it adapted with chilling precision, creating quarantine zones, pest houses, inspection systems. Venice learned that survival meant control, discipline, secrecy. And in that discipline, it recovered. Through the Renaissance, Venice became something extraordinary, a city of beauty, carved from fear. It painted like no other. It built like no other. It traded like no other. Its ships brought pepper, silk, sugar, cotton, spicy luxuries that reshaped European life. Its palaces shimmered on the water like marble illusions. But even the strongest illusions crack. A new threat was rising: the Ottoman Empire. Powerful, unstoppable, hungry. Venice had traded with Muslims for centuries, but now the Ottomans wanted the sea routes. Venice controlled. The collision was inevitable. The war that followed was brutal. Battles at sea, sieges on land, thousands dead. Venetian colonies fell one by one: Negroponte, Lepanto, Cyprus. The Mediterranean was changing, and Venice, once untouchable, was bleeding. Yet it survived, because Venice always survived. But the real danger was still unseen. It was not the Ottomans, not the plague, not rival powers. It was something far more deadly: the future. the discovery of the Americas, the new Atlantic trade routes. The rise of ocean-going empires, Spain, Portugal, England, the Dutch. Venice was a master of the old world, but the world was no longer old. The lagoon city entered its twilight without realizing it. The centuries that followed would test Venice in ways no merchant, no Doge, no sailor could have imagined. As the golden glow of the Renaissance spread across Italy, Venice embraced it with unmatched hunger. Painters like Titian and Tintoretto filled the Republic with color and fire, while architects sculpted palaces that seemed to float above the canals like visions from another world. To outsiders, Venice looked invincible, an enchanted fortress, built not just on water, but on pure confidence. But beneath the marble and music, danger was closing in. Across the horizon, the Ottoman Empire surged like a rising tide. Its fleets swelled with cannon, soldiers, and ambition. And they knew exactly who stood in their way. In 1453, when Constantinople fell, the world shuddered. The ancient gateway of trade between East and West was now in Ottoman hands, and Venice felt the blow like a dagger in the ribs. Their greatest rival had just seized the key to the markets Venice depended on. The Republic's response was swift, calculated, and terrifyingly bold. Venetian galleys patrolled the eastern Mediterranean, hunting for enemies, seizing cargo, fighting wars that stretched across islands and coastlines. But the Ottomans were relentless. Cyprus fell. Crete came under attack again and again. Every victory Venice achieved came at a cost so steep it shook the city to its core, and still Venice refused to kneel. In 1571, at the Battle of Lepanto, the Republic joined a Holy League to stop the Ottoman advance once and for all. The sea churned with shattered ships and burning oil, men screaming through clouds of gun smoke so thick the sun disappeared. And when it was over, Venice emerged battered but triumphant. The victory didn't erase their losses, but it proved to the world that the Republic would rather die fighting than fade quietly. Yet Venice's greatest enemy wasn't the Ottomans, Spain, or France. It was time. The world was changing. New continents were discovered. New trade routes bypassed the Mediterranean entirely. The Portuguese sailed around Africa. The Spanish crossed oceans unimaginable only a generation before, and Venice, locked inside its glittering lagoon, couldn't follow. Its merchants watched helplessly as the trade that once made them kings now slipped westward across the Atlantic. But Venice refused to collapse. If the world would no longer come to them for spices and silk, then Venice would reinvent itself. And it did. The city transformed into the cultural jewel of Europe, a magnet for artists, musicians, nobles, and dreamers. Theaters exploded with life. Carnivals filled the city with masks, secrets, and whispers. Diplomats from every kingdom visited Venice, not for trade but for influence, beauty, and power. But this glittering rebirth came with shadows. The Venetian Inquisition watched from behind closed doors. The Council of Ten, ruthless, silent, feared, made enemies disappear without a trace. Spies lurked in alleyways, recording every forbidden whisper. Venice had become a city where art flourished and trust died. A city where the walls themselves seemed to listen. Still, for all its danger and decadence, Venice remained the envy of Europe, until a young French general arrived, brilliant, ambitious, and unstoppable. Napoleon. The year was 1797. His armies swept through Italy like a firestorm. Kingdoms collapsed before him. Fortresses that had stood for centuries surrendered in days. And Venice, old, proud, isolated, watched the storm roll closer. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Republic's fate hung by a thread. The Great Council debated. Some demanded resistance. Others argued for submission. The city's once mighty fleet had dwindled to little more than a memory. And then Napoleon made his move. French troops marched into Venice, tearing down the symbols of its independence. The Lion of St. Mark, once feared across the Mediterranean, was ripped from its pedestal. The Republic, after more than 1,000 years of sovereignty, ceased to exist, not with a heroic last stand, not with a glorious naval battle, but with a silent surrender. Yet Venice did not die. It couldn't. The canals still shimmered with secrets. The palaces still whispered stories of power, betrayal, and brilliance. Even as empires rose and fell, Austrian rule, Italian unification, the chaos of 2 world wars, Venice endured. Slow, fragile, but unbroken. And then came the newest threat. Not armies or empires, but something more merciless. Water. The same sea that once protected Venice now threatened to consume it. High tides grew higher. Floods came faster. The city felt like a candle burning against a rising wind. But Venice fought back once again, because that is what Venice has always done. Massive engineering projects lifted the lagoon barriers, buying the city time. Time to breathe. Time to survive. Today, as waves lap against ancient stones and tourists wander through alleys older than nations, Venice stands on the edge of history, a miracle still living, a dream still afloat, a reminder that even a city born from desperation and built on water can shape the world for 1,000 years. And as long as people listen, Venice will never stop telling its story, one tide, one shadow, one shimmering reflection at a time.